In Brazil, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov began his tour of Latin American and Caribbean countries. Lavrov ratified Russia's readiness to seek a lasting solution to the conflict in Ukraine. In France, protests continue against President Emmanuel Macron's pension reform. And in Sudan, fighting continues between the army and the Rapid Support Forces military group for a third consecutive day, leaving over 200 people dead so far. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Brazil, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov held a joint press conference with his counterpart Mauro Vieira on Monday. Vieira said that during the meeting they discussed other issues, the situation in Ukraine, and possible ways to resolve the conflict in the country. Vieira also said Brasilia is ready to participate in the peaceful solution of the conflict. The Brazilian minister reaffirmed the country's position on the ceasefire in Ukraine, which should take place as soon as possible, and ensure respect for humanitarian law and the restoration of lasting peace. Lavrov arrived on Monday in Brazil, the first destination of his Latin American tour, which runs from April 17th to the 21st, and also includes Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. The visit focuses on the potential of the Brazilian-Russian strategic partnership and prospects for cooperation in areas of common interest, with a focus on science and technology, energy, defense, trade and education, as well as strengthening political dialogue on bilateral, international and regional issues.
We say that the approaches of Russia and Brazil to the events that are taking place now in the world are similar. We are united by a common desire to contribute to the formation of a more just, truly democratic, polycentric world order. We are interested in resolving the Ukrainian conflict as soon as possible.
Brazilian Foreign Minister Mauro Vieira ratified his nation's disposition to contribute to a peaceful solution for the conflict in Ukraine and slammed the application of unilateral sanctions.
In the international sphere, we addressed the latest developments in the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. I renewed the Brazilian disposition to contribute to a peaceful solution for the conflict, recalling the manifestations of President Lula in the sense of seeking to facilitate the formation of a group of friends from friendly countries to mediate negotiations between Russia and Ukraine. I also reiterated the Brazilian position, the application of unilateral sanctions. Such measures, besides not having the approval of the United Nations Security Council, have impacts on the economies of the entire world, and in particular on developing countries, many of which have not fully recovered from the pandemic.
During his new program, Con Maduro, Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro announced that this Tuesday he will receive the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov at the Miraflores Palace to discuss various issues of Russian-Venezuelan cooperation.
Tomorrow, we are going to have Foreign Minister Lavrov here in Venezuela, in important meetings with the Venezuelan Foreign Ministry, our Foreign Minister Ivan Gil, important meeting with our Executive Vice President Delcy Rodriguez, a personal friend of Sergei Lavrov for many years, and I'm going to receive him here in the Presidential Palace of Miraflores to review all the issues of Russian-Venezuelan cooperation and Russia's presence in Latin America and the Caribbean for the good of our region and world geopolitics. We are going to review and talk.
The head of state also reiterated his full support for the initiative of the International Conference of the Colombian President Gustavo Petro in search of international support for Venezuela.
I told the Foreign Minister to give to President Petro all the support for the success of this international conference. And I have seen the statements made today from New York by President Gustavo Petro regarding the call for this group of countries from Latin America, the Caribbean, Europe, Africa, and groups of countries to seek a way to support Venezuela in strengthening our peace, our democracy, our independence, our sovereignty with respect to Venezuela and to find a way so that the entire international community has a single voice. Zero sanctions on the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela.
The President of Mexico, Andrés Manuel López Obrador, considered that the fight against fentanyl should be preventive, not only with the intervention of drug control, and that priority should be given to social attention before the use of force. The President informed that the U.S. anti-drug agency allegedly infiltrated the Sinaloa cartel to obtain information on the manufacture and trafficking of fentanyl, an investigation that resulted in the investigation of 5 indictments against 28 people. The head of state emphasized that the most important thing to prevent drug consumption is to take away the anxiety and need to consume drugs among young people. In this regard, President López Obrador said that this is why the causes must be addressed so that illicit substances do not become an option for this sector of the population. Moreover, he reiterated his willingness to cooperate with the U.S. authorities to address the situation.
It was reaffirmed in the meeting we had in the United States, in Washington. Members of the government of the United States and of Mexico, that we are going to cooperate to help the authorities of the United States, because it is very regrettable what is happening to them due to the consumption of fentanyl. There are many dead and young people, and out of humanism, out of friendship and cooperation, we have to help. But we are also asking them to revise their strategies.
Health authorities in Haiti have recorded 665 deaths from cholera, a disease detected last October after 3 years without diagnosing positive cases. The Ministry of Health reported that so far 2,617 confirmed cases have been registered, with a positivity rate of 35.63%. The entity pointed out that children under 5 years of age continue to be the group with highest risk, with more than 23% of suspected cases and 21% of confirmed cases. Authorities emphasized that the disease has been detected in 10 departments of the country, led by the Western region. Let's now take a short break, but first remember you can follow us on TikTok at teleSUR English, in which you'll be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and much more. All the stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back from the south. In France, protests against the pension reform escalate following the approval of the measure that raised the retirement age from 62 to 64. After 3 months of protests and strikes, the left and unions vowed not to give in and warned of mass Labor Day protests on May 1st. Polls have consistently recorded a majority of French opposed to the reform, which the government ran through Parliament using a controversial mechanism to avoid. Speaking from the Élysée Palace this Monday, President Macron defended the reform as necessary and insisted doing nothing was not a solution. Macron's personal popularity ratings have eroded, with some analysts suggesting he has given a head start to far-right leader Marine Le Pen on the long path to the 2027 elections. Former U.S. President Trump's financial filings with the Federal Election Commission have offered the public a first glimpse into his earnings in the years following his presidential term. The more than 100-page document reveals that the social media platform Truth Social, which the Republican launched in early 2022 after backing from Twitter, has earned its owner just $201, despite being valued at between $5 million and $25 million on its launching cost. The report also showed that the former U.S. leader earned more than $5 million from his speeches, between $100,000 and $1 million from his non-fungible token scheme, and $5 million in royalties through DT Marks Oman, one of his offshore companies. The British Parliament announced the opening of an investigation into Prime Minister Rishi Sunak for alleged conflict of interest. The investigation appears to have been prompted by his wife Akshata Murthy's links to a childcare company called Koru Kids, which is listed on the government website as one of 6 agencies responsible for this. According to some media reports, the company would be a beneficiary of a government pilot scheme to incentivize people to become child carers. Parliament questions whether Sunak's statement on the issue was open and frank, in accordance with the rules set by the Standards Commissioner, as the company benefit from a policy announced in the spring budget. In Russia, more than 100 speakers and moderators at the Moscow Economic Forum discussed important subjects as non-resource sector, production, new industrialization, and the variety of needs of modern society. Alexei Pimenov gives us more details.
Resource sector is one of the drivers of economic development, and manufacturing is the engine of social and technological progress. These and other subjects were discussed by the participants of the Moscow Economic Forum. One of its key topics was the new industrialization and also the diversity of needs of modern society.
It is important that these needs can be satisfied through closer cooperation, a real partnership with such approach. The development of the world as a whole, together with the individual regions, becomes part of a picture.
International organizations have an important role to play in developing partnerships such as Asian, the SCO, or the BRICS.
There is a successful cooperation in the BRICS. They have opened the bank. A lot of investments are being made by banks. So there are new processes going on in the world.
The answers to challenges already existed in the past, and not necessarily their own. The Chinese experience of modernization was discussed by forum participants at a separate session. One of the conclusions was that China's specialists implemented a special personal policy.
It is based on Confucian principles of selecting competent, honest, and responsible human resources. The second one was a target-oriented policy, oriented on the development of the sector, on stimulating investment activity and increasing competitiveness. Third, a combination of socialist ideology and market competition.
A respectful attitude toward partners in the international arena is another strength of China's approach. Gleises believes, as equally important is the balanced approach to economic transformation.
Before the reforms, we had about 80% of the population living in the countryside. During the reforms, we protected the interests of the peasants very well, and they sent their children, young people, a very good labor force to develop the economy.
Participants also discussed culture and international relations. There were more than 100 speakers and moderators. It was 2 days of work. The Moscow Economic Forum is a regular event. It is the 7th this year.
Peruvian authorities report that heavy rains have affected several areas in the region of Piura. According to reports, a total of 19 hamlets and 25 settlements were damaged in the district of Tombo Grande as a result of the rainfall on Sunday. Dozens of families were reportedly affected and at least 2 houses were lost. The civil defense carried out the evacuation of the affected families and transferred them to shelters. Officials urged the regional authorities to provide the necessary support to the teleSUR English continues to grow. You can now tune in from 33 different African countries through StarSat, dial 461 and enjoy Latin American alternative broadcasts. One final short break and we'll be right back. Don't go away. Welcome back from the south. In Sudan, the death toll rose as fighting between the army and paramilitary forces led by rival generals raged for a third day in different Sudanese provinces. The death toll from the fighting rose to over 200, with more than 1,800 civilians and combatants injured. Moreover, the number of casualties is thought to be far higher, with many wounded unable to reach hospitals due to the range of movement during the fighting. According to the Doctors' Union, the fighting had heavily damaged multiple hospitals in Khartoum and other cities, with some rendered completely out of service. The violence has forced terrified people to shelter in their homes, fearing for a prolonged conflict that could plunge Sudan into a deeper chaos.
More than 180 fatalities, people killed, more than 1,800 injured, including 3 colleagues from the World Food Programme who have been killed while trying to serve the Sudanese people in North Darfur.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called on Sudan's warring parties to immediately cease hostilities, restore calm, and begin a dialogue to resolve the crisis and condemn the death of civilians.
I strongly condemn the outbreak of fighting that is taking place in Sudan and appeal to the leaders of the Sudanese armed forces and the rapid support forces to immediately cease hostilities, restore calm, and begin a dialogue to resolve the crisis. The situation has already led to horrendous loss of life, including many civilians. Any further escalation could be devastating for the country and the region. The humanitarian situation in Sudan was already precarious and is now catastrophic. I condemn the deaths and injuries to civilians and humanitarian workers and the targeting and looting of premises. I remind all parties of the need to respect international law, including ensuring the safety and security of all United Nations and associated personnel and humanitarian aid workers.
Residents of Israeli-occupied Golan in Syria commemorate the 77th anniversary of their independence day from French colonialism. The Syrian people confirm their commitment to continue strengthening their courage in contributing to the reconstruction and defense of the country against terrorism and occupiers. Meanwhile, President Bashar al-Assad received greetings messages from heads of states such as Cuba, Russia, and China, stressing their support for unity and sovereignty in order to strengthen cooperation relations between countries. In turn, the Syrian military commemorated the celebration with parades and events in their units and barracks, where senior commanders stressed their commitment to preserve the independence achieved by their ancestors. And Syria celebrated this Monday, April 17th, the 77th anniversary of its independence from French colonialism, a date marked by more than 12 years of struggle by its government and people against Western neocolonialism. Our correspondent in Damascus, Hisham Wanus, has more details.
The Syrians, attached to the glorious history of their ancestors, who founded the independent national state and rejected all forms of aggression and colonialism, continue today the struggle in defense of their sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity. A battle they wage against the U.S. occupation of their country's oil and gas fields, the plundering of their energy and agricultural resources, the separatist groups supported by Washington, the terrorist gangs, and the repeated Israeli aggressions, which are among the multiple aspects of Western neocolonialism.
We are waging a real battle in defense of our independence against the Zionist enemies, against the United States and its allies. And on this glorious date, we ratify that we will keep the highest level of training and willingness to sacrifice our lives in defense of our homeland against the new Western colonialist attempts and their gross interference in our internal affairs.
The European and U.S. economic coercive measures imposed unilaterally on Syria are also part of the methods employed by the West to subdue the people of this Arab nation, a challenge that the Syrians are facing with their own resources and with the support of friendly and allied countries whose economic, humanitarian, and social contributions are helping to preserve the independence of Syria and its people.
The air and sea relief bridges have not ceased to strengthen our people's resolve with humanitarian, medical and food assistance, which has a positive impact on improving the standard of living of all the Syrian people who are suffering the effects of the war, the blockade and the earthquake. So we appreciate this helping hand from all the friendly countries, including the United Arab Emirates.
The fraternal peoples of Latin America are also present in this campaign in defense of the independence of Syria. The 800 Cuban international soldiers who in 1973 fought alongside their Syrian comrades against the Israeli occupation and the remains of the brave Cuban soldier Eugenio Calvo Perez, which rest in the cemetery of the Syrian martyrs, are clear examples of this assistance.
In some way, Cuba has also done its bit for the resistance of the Syrian people in the face of so much aggression and so many actions by countries that don't really want peace and tranquility for a country that needs peace and order to develop itself. Cuba was and will always be at the side of the Syrian people, both in international organizations supporting their just cause and in daily life, in development and in the ways in which we can contribute to a prosperous relationship of mutual benefit for both countries.
The enemy's defeat is inevitable, so say the Syrians on this new anniversary of their independence, who ratify their determination to follow the example of their ancestors in offering their lives in defense of their homeland.
Hisham News, teleSUR, Damascus, Syria.
We have come to the end of this news briefing. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on our socials on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For teleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.